I stood at that charity gala, dripping in diamonds worth millions, watching the man I'd waited 5 years for walk past me without a second glance. His eyes, fixed on a woman in a thrift store dress, holding a sleeping child. That night, I learned wealth can't buy what truly matters. Before we dive into this story, if you love tales about karma, real love, and unexpected twists, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. My name is Vivian Ashford, and I was born with a platinum spoon in my mouth, trust funds, summer homes in the Hamptons, a closet that could rival a Chanel boutique. My life was a carefully curated Instagram feed before Instagram even existed. And for 5 years, I'd been waiting for Dominic Sterling to make our arrangement official. Dominic wasn't just any billionaire. He was the billionaire, tech genius, philanthropist, the kind of man who made Forbes covers and broke hearts without even trying. We met at a business summit in Monaco when I was 23. He was building his empire, and I was the perfect accessory to complement it. Beautiful, connected, from the right family. We had an understanding. That's what we called it, an understanding. When the time is right, he'd always say, flashing that devastating smile. And I waited. God, did I wait. I turned down marriage proposals from hedge fund managers and European aristocrats. My friends envied my position. Everyone knew Vivian Ashford and Dominic Sterling were endgame. It was inevitable, like gravity or the stock market eventually correcting itself. The annual Sterling Foundation Gala was the event of the season. The who's who of society packed into the grand ballroom of the Celestia Hotel, writing checks that could fund small countries. This year felt different. I felt it in my bones. 5 years was long enough. Tonight, Dominic would finally announce our engagement. I spent $50,000 on my appearance. A custom Valentino gown in midnight blue, diamonds from Harry Winston that caught the light like captured stars, hair and makeup that took 6 hours to perfect. When I looked in the mirror that evening, I saw exactly what I was supposed to be. Flawless, untouchable, the future Mrs. Sterling. My chauffeur dropped me at the red carpet entrance. Flash bulbs exploded as I stepped out, and I gave them my practice smile. The one that said I belonged here, that this was just another Tuesday for Vivian Ashford. Inside, the ballroom glittered like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, champagne flowing like water. I spotted Dominic immediately. You know how they say you can always find the person you love in a crowded room? It was like that, except when I found him, he wasn't looking at me. He was crouched down on one knee in his $10,000 suit, and he was talking to a little girl. My heart did this strange stuttering thing. The little girl had dark curls and was clutching a worn stuffed rabbit that had clearly seen better days. She was maybe 4 years old, wearing a simple pink dress that probably came from Target. And standing behind her, looking apologetic and out of place, was a woman in a dress I recognized from a department store clearance rack. This was Nora Bennett. I didn't know her name yet, but I would never forget it. Nora was pretty in that girl next door way. No designer clothes, no professional blowout, no diamonds. Just natural beauty and an anxious smile as she tried to apologize to Dominic for her daughter being there. I learned later that her babysitter had canceled last minute, and she couldn't miss the gala because she was presenting a grant proposal for the Children's Hospital, where she worked as a coordinator. I watched Dominic's face as he talked to that little girl, and I saw something I'd never seen in 5 years. Pure, unguarded joy. He was showing her a magic trick, making a coin disappear and reappear behind her ear. The child's laughter rang out across the ballroom like bells. And Dominic laughed too, really laughed, not the polite chuckle he used at business dinners. I approached in my expensive heels, my practice smile firmly in place. Dominic, darling, you look wonderful tonight. He glanced up, and for a second, I thought I saw something like irritation flash across his face. Vivian, hi, that was it, just hi. Then he turned back to the little girl. This is Lily. She's teaching me about her friend, Mr. Hoppers. He gestured to the stuffed rabbit. I stood there in my diamonds and designer gown, completely invisible. The entire evening unraveled like a cashmere sweater with a loose thread. Dominic spent every moment with Nora and Lily. He got the child ice cream from the dessert bar. He carried her when she got tired, this tiny girl, with her head on his shoulder, her rabbit clutched in one hand. He listened to Nora talk about her hospital project with an intensity he'd never shown during our countless dinner conversations about market trends and merger acquisitions. I tried everything. I joined their conversation, mentioning the fundraiser I was chairing next month. Dominic nodded politely, but didn't take his eyes off Lily, who was trying to teach him a clapping game. I suggested we grab a drink, just the two of us. He said, "Maybe later, Vivienne. I'm in the middle of something here." The middle of something. With a single mother and her child. Other people noticed. Of course they did. I saw the glances, heard the whispers. Patricia Worthington actually asked me if Dominic and I had broken up. We were never officially together, I snapped, then immediately regretted showing my hand. At the end of the night, when the speeches were done and the checks were written, I cornered him by the exit. Nora was waiting by the coat check with a sleeping Lily in her arms. "Dominic, we need to talk about our plans," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. Pity. "Vivienne, we should definitely talk soon. Things have changed." Changed? What's changed? But he was already walking away, back to Nora, taking Lily from her tired arms and carrying the sleeping child out into the night. The woman in the thrift store dress and the billionaire, with a little girl between them, like she'd always belonged there. I went home and cried for the first time in years. Ugly crying, the kind that ruins makeup and makes you see yourself clearly in the mirror afterward. I looked pathetic. I looked desperate. I looked exactly like what I was, someone who'd been playing a part for so long that she'd forgotten there was supposed to be a person underneath. The next morning, I did something I'm not proud of. I hired a private investigator. Within a week, I had Nora Bennett's entire life story in a manila folder. Born in Ohio, middle-class family, married her high school sweetheart when she was 22. He was a firefighter named Danny. They had Lily 2 years later. Danny died in a building collapse when Lily was 18 months old. Nora moved to the city, took the hospital job, raised her daughter alone. She volunteered at homeless shelters on weekends. She'd never had a parking ticket. Her credit score was mediocre because medical bills from Lily's heart condition had drained their savings. Lily had a heart condition, a congenital defect that needed surgery they could barely afford, even with insurance. Nora was at that gala because the hospital was desperate for funding for their pediatric cardiac unit. I wanted to find something, some flaw, some angle, some proof that she was using Dominic. But there was nothing. She was just good. Genuinely, infuriatingly good. Dominic called me 3 days later. "Coffee," he said. "We need to talk." We met at that pretentious cafe in Tribeca, where celebrities hide behind sunglasses. He didn't waste time with small talk. "I've been going through the motions for years, Vivienne. With work, with life, with us. Meeting Nora and Lily woke something up in me." "Us?" I tried to keep my voice from shaking. "We had plans, Dominic. An understanding. Did we? Or did we have an arrangement that made sense on paper?" He stirred his coffee, not meeting my eyes. "When's the last time we laughed together? When's the last time we talked about anything that mattered? Our relationship was a business merger that never quite closed. You're throwing away 5 years for a woman you just met." "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally choosing something real." He paused, and when he looked at me, I saw he'd already made his decision. "I've been funding Lily's surgery through the foundation. Anonymous donation. Nora doesn't know it's me." Of course he was. Of course the billionaire was secretly playing hero. It was so perfectly him, so frustratingly noble. "She's using you," I said, and even I could hear how desperate I sounded. "No, Vivienne. She doesn't even know I'm interested in her. We've had coffee twice. She talks about her daughter and lights up like the sun. When's the last time you lit up about anything that wasn't a designer sale? That hurt because it was true. I wish I could say I accepted defeat gracefully. I didn't. I became obsessed. I started volunteering at charities, making sure photographers were there to capture my good deeds. I showed up at events where I knew Nora would be, trying to befriend Lily with expensive toys that the child politely accepted but never seemed excited about. I offered to fund bigger projects than Nora's hospital proposal. I made subtle comments to mutual friends about gold diggers and single mothers looking for meal tickets. I became the villain in my own story and couldn't stop myself. The breaking point came at another fundraiser 6 weeks later. I'd had 3 glasses of champagne, and Dominic walked in with Nora, not as a casual date. She was wearing a dress he'd clearly bought her. Nothing too expensive, just something that fit her perfectly and made her look beautiful in an effortless way. Lily wasn't there, probably with a sitter. They looked happy. I snapped. Everyone should know, I announced, loudly enough for people to turn and stare, that some people use their children to manipulate wealthy men. It's really quite clever when you think about it. The room went silent, that horrible complete silence, where everyone's watching a car crash happen in slow motion. Nora's face went pale. Dominic's went dark with anger. He walked over to me, and his voice was cold enough to freeze blood. "The only person I see using people here is you, Vivian. Funny how I never noticed before. You use your family name, your looks, your connections. You've never actually worked for anything in your life, and now you're attacking a woman who's shown more grace and strength than you could ever understand." He took Nora's hand and walked out. Half the room followed them. The other half stared at me like I was something disgusting they'd found on their shoe. I left through the kitchen exit and cried in my car for an hour. Here's the twist I didn't see coming. The twist that changed everything. 2 days later, I got a letter, hand-delivered to my apartment by courier. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Nora's handwriting. "Dear Vivienne, I know what you said at the fundraiser, and I know you've been investigating me. I also know something you don't. Dominic didn't fund Lily's surgery. You did. 6 months ago, you made a donation to the Children's Hospital Cardiac Unit. You were drunk at a charity auction and bid $500,000 on some art piece to outdo Patricia Worthington. You don't remember because you do this often. That donation went directly to funding pediatric surgeries. My daughter was one of them. You saved Lily's life, Vivian, not Dominic. You. I thought you should know that despite everything, despite your anger and your pain, you did something beautiful. Maybe by accident, maybe while trying to prove something to someone else. But you did it. I don't hate you. I actually feel sorry for you. You're so busy protecting yourself that you can't see your own goodness." Nora. I read that letter 17 times. Then I sat on my apartment floor and cried until I couldn't breathe. She was right. I'd made that donation and completely forgotten about it. It was just another tax write-off, another check to prove I belonged among the philanthropic elite. I'd saved a child's life and hadn't even remembered doing it. What did that say about me? My father came to visit the next day. He'd heard about the fundraiser incident. "I raised you with privilege," he said quietly. "Not to be privileged. Your mother would be ashamed of who you've become." My mother died when I was 16. She'd been the kind of person who knew everyone's name, from the doorman to the CEO. She volunteered every week at soup kitchens. She used to tell me that wealth was a responsibility, not a right. I'd forgotten that. Somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten everything that mattered. That week, I called the Children's Hospital and asked about volunteer opportunities. No press release, no photographers, just me, showing up to read stories to sick kids and help organize donation drives. It was the first time in my adult life I'd done something without an audience. The kids didn't care about my designer clothes or my last name. They just wanted someone to do puzzles with them, to listen to their stories about school and friends and their favorite movies. One little boy, no more than 6, asked me why I looked so sad all the time. I guess I forgot how to be happy, I told him. That's silly, he said. Being happy is easy. You just gotta find stuff that makes you smile. Out of the mouths of babes. 3 months later, I was at the hospital, organizing a toy drive, when Nora walked in. We both froze. She was there for a follow-up appointment with Lily. The silence stretched between us, like glass about to shatter. Then Nora did something I didn't expect. She smiled. Not a big smile, just a small genuine one. "Coffee?" she asked. We sat in the hospital cafeteria with terrible vending machine coffee, and we talked, really talked. She told me about Danny, about the terror of raising a daughter alone, about the nightmare she still had about losing Lily to her heart condition. I told her about my mother, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only wanted access to my wallet, about waiting 5 years for a man who'd never actually promised me anything. "I never meant to take him from you," she said quietly. "You didn't take anything. You showed me I had nothing real to lose." I stirred my coffee. "I'm sorry. For everything I said. For the investigation. For being me." "You're not as bad as you think you are," Nora said. "You saved my daughter's life. That's not nothing. I didn't even remember doing it. Maybe that makes it better. Maybe the best things we do are the ones we don't keep score of." She invited me to Lily's 5th birthday party the following week. A small apartment with homemade decorations and a grocery store cake. Dominic was there, fully integrated into their little family. They weren't married yet, but anyone could see they would be. He was different with them, softer, more present, more alive. Lily ran up to me when I arrived, throwing her arms around my legs. "You're the story lady from the hospital." I'd brought a gift, not an expensive one, just a book I'd loved as a child. She squealed with delight and made me promise to read it to her later. Dominic and I had a moment alone in Nora's tiny kitchen. He was cutting cake, and I was arranging paper plates. "You look different," he said, lighter somehow. "I feel different. Turns out being awful is exhausting." He laughed. "You weren't awful. You were just lost. I'm sorry for everything." "I know." He put the knife down and looked at me seriously. "For what it's worth, I never meant to hurt you. We just wanted different things. And I was too much of a coward to say it. You wanted real love. I wanted a trophy. We're both better off." He hugged me then, and it felt like closure, like the end of a chapter that needed to end. A year passed. I started dating again. A high school teacher named Ben, who challenged me to think differently, who didn't care about my bank account, who made me laugh until my sides hurt. I sold most of my designer clothes and funded a foundation for single parents, using my connections and money for something that mattered. I kept volunteering at the hospital every week. I was genuinely happy. Not the performance of happiness I'd cultivated my whole life, but real joy that came from within. When Dominic and Nora's wedding invitation arrived, I didn't hesitate. I bought a simple dress, nothing flashy, and I went. The ceremony was beautiful in its simplicity. A garden wedding, string lights, real emotions, instead of expensive pageantry. Lily was the flower girl, scattering petals with the kind of pure enthusiasm only children possess. When she spotted me in the crowd, she abandoned her flower basket and ran over for a hug. Dominic and Nora said their vows, and they were so clearly, perfectly in love that everyone cried, even me, especially me. At the reception, Nora found me standing by the dessert table. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It means more than you know. Thank you for inviting me, and for the letter, and for showing me who I was supposed to be." She hugged me tight. "You showed yourself, Vivienne." I just held up the mirror. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the gala where this all started. How I'd stood there in my diamonds, so certain of my place in the world, so convinced that I deserved Dominic because we looked good together on paper. How wrong I'd been about everything. Dominic didn't choose Nora over me. He chose authenticity over arrangement. He chose real connection over convenient companionship. And watching him make that choice forced me to look at my own life and ask what I was choosing. The karma in this story wasn't punishment, it was awakening. Sometimes the universe doesn't give us what we want because what we want isn't what we need. I wanted Dominic. I needed to become someone worth being. That night at the gala, I lost a man I'd never really had. But in losing him, I found something far more valuable. I found myself. The real twist, I saved Lily's life before I even knew her name. Maybe some part of me, buried under all the designer labels and desperate social climbing, was always capable of goodness. Maybe we're all capable of it, if we stop performing long enough to be real. I see Nora and Lily regularly now. We're friends, real friends, not social climbing connections. Lily calls me Aunt Viv, and sometimes I pick her up from school when Nora's working late. Dominic and I are cordial, even friendly. It turns out you can have closure without bitterness if you're both brave enough to be honest. My life isn't perfect. I still mess up. I still sometimes catch myself caring too much about the wrong things. But I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to be the person my mother would be proud of. The person who uses privilege as responsibility. The person who remembers the good things she does. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many diamonds you wear or how perfect you look in photographs. What matters is how you make people feel. What matters is the love you give and the lives you touch and the grace you show when everything falls apart. I thought I lost everything that night at the gala, but I actually lost only my illusions. And that, it turns out, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes the universe doesn't give us what we want. It gives us what we need. If this story touched you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about growth, karma, and unexpected second chances. What do you think? Was Vivian right to change, or should she have fought harder? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, real wealth isn't what you have, it's who you become.